Hello, and welcome to From a Basement in Tulsa. I'm Jason Ferguson, and welcome to our newly decorated studio, Mr. Kostis. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. It feels really good. Reminds me of when I was a teenager in Athens and I had a jazz quartet, and we used to rehearse at all these basement studios. So I like this a lot.
That's cool.
It feels very cozy.
Yeah, it feels like home, huh?
Yeah, yes, it does.
I had just learned when I started this podcast, right before I moved into a basement, I just learned we even had basements. I didn't know before then, and now I'm obsessed with them.
Yeah, it seems kind of, I guess a lot of these downtown buildings have basements, but basement is not something that people really talk about in Tulsa. So I like the title, Basement from a Basement in Tulsa. It's kind of extraordinary.
Yeah, it was cool to try to find a basement office for this, and I think our office building was like, why do you want a basement? Like, because it's in the name, you can't change it. And you got to spend a little time in a basement this week. I remember.
Yes.
I saw, I think on Facebook, I didn't even know, but there were tornadoes here, and I didn't even know how big of a deal they were until much later. But then you were like, yeah, we just had a meeting and drank some wine in our basement.
Yeah. Well, so were you in the basement the whole time?
We have a basement in our apartment complex.
I see. Okay.
Too, but we went to the basement for sure.
Well, I was actually, speaking of basements, I've been in the basement for the last 2 weeks because we rehearse at the PAC. We rehearse in the basement at the Norman Theater. But on that particular evening, I had actually left rehearsal and gone to a meeting at the office. So there were about 6 or 7 people there, and we heard the sirens, and everybody's phones are going crazy with the tornado warnings and stuff. And so I said, well, maybe let's just take the meeting down to the basement, because nobody wanted to drive in that anyway.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let's just take it down to the basement because we have plenty of room down at the opera office. And so somebody said, well, do you have any wine? I said, well, yeah, of course we have wine. It's the opera.
Yeah. We better. We didn't even say where you're coming here from. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm the artistic director of Tulsa Opera.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
And
thanks for having me.
Could you say your last name, please?
Protopapas.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Living in Oklahoma, is that pronounced wrong regularly?
No, I mean it kind of looks daunting. So when people see it, they're like, "How do you pronounce that?" And I said, "Well, if you just read all the letters in succession, it will work out just fine." So everybody calms down and take a big breath. It always works out just fine. It's just you don't want to you don't want to rush it. So it's easy. You just read all the letters in succession.
That works wonderfully. I want to give you my background of opera.
Cool.
It's pretty extensive. I've seen 2 shows.
Okay.
That's the whole background. I went to see The Giver, performed by the Youth Opera, and then Romeo and Juliet.
Cool.
And I think I'm in love with it now.
Yeah, good.
It's really cool, and I'm really glad to have you here so you can kind of just talk about what the opera is and what's been going on with it, man.
Well, opera is a lot of things. That's why, in fact, sometimes people have a little trouble trying to figure out where to put it.
Yeah.
Because it's an art form that brings together all the other art forms. It has music, it has storytelling, it often has a historical background. Sometimes it may be based on a book, and it's over 400 years old as an art form. So there is not only a variety of content, but there is also a variety of styles. And, there are operas that are from the 1600s, and there are operas that being written right now. So there's really just a very exciting variety. I can't think of any other type of music that has so much variety, because you have, there is like Baroque opera. There's from Baroque opera to rock opera, and I think you'll appreciate this because you play acoustic music. That one thing that is very unique about opera is that nothing is amplified.
Yeah.
So when you come to theater, it's all acoustic. The voices, the orchestra, there are no mics anywhere. In fact, there are some mics that we use for, communications and foldbacks and stuff. But, and I guess that's the exceptional thing. That's kind of the thing we're proud of, that, we have the singers that sing in a 2,000-seat theater. Yeah. And they have a 60-piece band and they don't use a mic. So
I know a little bit about the mixing of, because I was in, I act like I know what I'm talking about by being in a high school band.
Right.
So I can imagine, I can't really imagine the technique of how can you explain how the orchestra is put into the room? It's kind of
well. It's not really that difficult from that different from just a musical. Like your high school musical, the basic principles of how you put that together. With opera, it's the same thing, except the orchestra is generally bigger, so we can have anywhere from 40 to 60 pieces in the pit, and they're down in the pit, and that helps. I mean, if you sometimes when they do operas, concert operas, and they have the orchestra on stage, it's a little bit more problematic, but it's down in the pit, so that takes care of the balance a little bit, helps the singers project over it. But it's the way the singers are trained, and the way the composers have learned to write, because you write for the voice differently when it's not going to be amplified.
Yeah.
And the good composers are careful not to write the orchestra too heavy when someone is singing, or not to write the orchestra in the same range. It's it's all part of the art. So yeah, it works, but it's all the same. So you have a story, and people sing it, and you have some parts where it's like more narrative, or there's more dialogue, but it's always sung, or at least almost sung. And then you have the more lyrical parts where people break into song. So somebody said, so I don't know who it was that wrote. Opera I'm paraphrasing that, opera is a crazy thing because nobody sings when they feel reasonable. So
yeah, and I was super impressed when I found, because when I went to the theater, I had some friends that were sitting at the very top, and I was like, oh no, they're not going to be able to hear. But no, it's fine. They can project the whole room.
Sometimes, depending on where the theater, sometimes the seats at the top have the best acoustics. When the opera is done well, you may be sitting so far that you can't really see, but you can always hear.
That's cool. I'm impressed with it all. And I saw you give a lecture before.
Right.
Do you do that every opera, every opening night, or how's that?
I would do that before every performance. I hate to call it lecture because it's
not a lecture.
It feels so professorial. We call that pre-curtain talk.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a free talk in the space right adjacent to the theater at the PAC, and it's free for anybody who has to get to the show. And I just give them a little background on the show, tell them a little bit about the composer, anecdotes, some funny stories. Just explain a few things. Sometimes the material is really familiar, like Romeo and Juliet, and sometimes it's less familiar. And a lot of the operas are in foreign languages, so we do have the surtitle, so people don't have to guess, or you don't have to speak Italian or French to watch the opera. We have the surtitles above the stage, so you can follow the story. Although a lot of people, even people who've never been to the opera before and they may not speak a word of French or Italian, say, well, I wasn't really reading the titles because I could understand what was going on because of when the music. You can tell the story with music in ways that you can't tell it, just with pure speech. So that helps.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that I learned that surtitle is even a word at that precursor speech.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I grew up in Greece, and we watched a lot of foreign movies. But in Greece, they don't dub the movies, so all the movies have subtitles.
Yes.
So I've been used to that idea. You don't see a lot of movies with subtitles here. I guess on the captions on TV, or if you turn the volume all the way down. But so it's basically like the subtitles on your Netflix or on TV, or the closed captions, and
it's above.
It's above the stage. Yeah.
Call it sir. That's
what I've really wanted to invent. If I were an inventor, I was wondering if sometime in the future someone is not going to invent some type of projecting surface that will be transparent, but you can project on it. So you can be in front of the stage, and then you can project on it, and you only see the subtitles just like you see them on TV. So you don't have to look above the stage to see the translation. You can just see the translation in front of the singers.
I say take it one step further and just have the words show up over each, like in a text bubble. Over
like
each
a bubble?
person.
Yeah. That's an idea. Let me think about that.
There'll probably be a day where we don't even need a screen. I hear a lot of people talking about how maybe your glasses will just do that for you over each person. That's going to be weird.
Yeah. Well, maybe there will be a like the glasses that they give you at the 3D movies.
Yep. Just like that.
We can have those in the lobby, and people can wear them and just watch the. Well, I'm sure that's going to happen sometime in the future. At least someone's going. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm sure someone's going to try it.
Why wouldn't they? Speaking of future and time travel, just kidding. Right. But I've been reading a little bit about how just music moves and changes and sometimes recycles. And being such an old art form, do you see that with the history of opera, and do you see it changing faster modernly, or how does that?
Well, I think there's a lot of. The more time passes, the more styles and ideas become available, because the ideas of the past, especially the good ones, live on. So you don't lose the old ideas when you create new ones. So the more time passes, composers have more ideas and material to work with. They can make a lot of choices. There's also a lot of experimentation. There are a lot of operas being written as we speak, and some of them are in a more traditional style. So the music is a little bit more, it sort of sounds more like the classics. I mean, you can always tell that it's contemporary.
Yes.
The musical language is always more evolved, but they're more tonal. They have simpler tunes, simpler orchestration, and then there's there are compositions that include that instead of the traditional orchestra, they have a rock band, or that they have sections where the singers aren't really singing, that they have a more declamatory style. It's like they're half singing. So composers are experimenting with those things all the time, and it can get from the very simple to the overly complicated. There's just a little bit of everything out there, something for everyone. I mean, we tend to, in the Tulsa Opera, we tend to concentrate a little bit more on the mainstream. But we do an American opera every year. And for the most part, we don't do any of the, the far out experimental stuff.
You're going to have a DJ rave techno opera this year?
Well, no, we don't. But we would like to have one, not in the big theater. It's pretty hard to fill a 2,400-seat theater with that sort of product. But we do more adventurous stuff. We have these little shows that we do over at the Philbrook every spring, and those are a little bit more out there. But I think doing more experimental stuff is something that I really want to do in the future. But we'll have to find an alternative space and tap into a new audience. I mean, there are people out there who would come to the experimental stuff that don't come to the traditional. Yep. So that's why you have to have different types of. And opera is capable of covering all that ground. So you can still be experimental, and you're not leaving the turf of opera.
I found that all art forms seem to be that way. I've been amazed by it, by having like comedians over and just different kinds of artists. And I'm always amazed at how similar every kind of art form is. Very different in their own ways. But I want to kind of know how a singer gets into the opera and then maybe progresses to a national, or is it much like every other?
Well, it's most American singers get into opera through some exposure to musical theater. Their school plays in musicals all the time.
Uh-huh.
So, a kid in middle school or high school that is artistically inclined, shall we say?
Yes.
Might be in a show and they like to sing, so they take some voice lessons. And depending on some of it is, chance of who they run into. Sometimes, most of them, somebody at some point told them, well, your voice is suitable for opera, so you should, learn to sing opera.
That, yeah.
And it's amazing how many young people, once they start singing opera, they fall in love with it. I'm always amazed because opera is not such a huge industry. I mean, there aren't that many jobs, and it takes a lot of time and it costs a lot of money to learn how to sing opera. And it's, you spend years and years and years learning how to sing, and then you also have to learn how to act. And then there is all kinds of, your voice and your personality is out there all the time as a young singer. So you're trying to win auditions, you're trying to get into school, you try to win competitions, you try to get attention, and it's really not easy. There's a lot of discouragement in this because it's really something that only the best ultimately get to have a career. But I'm amazed about how many young people want to put themselves through that. I mean, it blows my mind that something as difficult as that will attract so many young people. And most of the singers that I work with here, the American singers, don't come from a classical music background. There are a lot of them that has sang country or sang musical theater. Ava, who plays is the female lead in our current opera, The Mice and Men, used to sing country music. I have a friend who is a big tenor. He sings all the big Italian tenor stuff, like all the Pavarotti stuff. And he started out by singing heavy metal.
That's incredible.
So, people, all it takes for someone to be introduced. And because it just has the potential for expression is huge. I mean, opera is really over the top. So you can put so much emotion in it. So, and people are drawn into that.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the Giver,
right.
I want to come right back to Mice and Men.
Yeah.
At the Giver, Greg kind of gave everybody an introduction and a welcome to it was the youth opera, and it was the first time I was involved with being at opera at all. And he was like, if you love music, if music moves you, then join us. This is for you. And I was like, I'm in. I was sold automatically. I guess I want to know, is there going to be of Mice and Men, is there going to be any jealousy between the performers because one of them hasn't really put in many years and hasn't had any vocal lessons and is a puppy?
Well, they say that you should never be on stage with animals and with kids because they always steal the show.
For sure.
So, well, I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
And the important thing is, we want to make sure that the puppy and the dog who haven't had any vocal lessons don't decide to sing along. So as far as the puppy goes, the puppy is, the main character, Lenny, comes on stage with the puppy and he's petting the puppy. And then when he has to put the puppy away, there's actually a box that is built into the set. And the box has a little cup built into it in which we put peanut butter. So then he puts the puppy in the box and the puppy eats the peanut butter. So he's busy. And you have to stage management have to figure out how much peanut butter to put in there so that by the time he has to take the puppy back out, the puppy has just finished the peanut butter. Because if he runs out of peanut butter too soon, he's going to start yelping.
Yes.
If he hasn't finished the peanut butter, he's not going to want to come out.
Oh.
So apparently, I heard that Corey, the guy who's playing Lenny, last time he did the shutdown of the rehearsals, they had put too much peanut butter in there, and the puppy wasn't finished, so he beat him.
So we're going to be pausing the show. If that's...
Yeah, exactly. So that's when I say about opera being so many things. I mean, it's like down to the peanut butter.
I never even would have considered that at all. That's a great way to keep the puppy busy. I just randomly. This has nothing to do with anything, but I randomly remembered, like in my 8th grade year of the marching band, I had to hold an instrument that I didn't play. I had to hold a clarinet because I had a clarinetist spot and I played trumpet. So the whole season of marching band, the person who owned the clarinet would put it together for me. And I found out like the very end that they would put a nickel inside of it. So I couldn't push any air through it. So I wouldn't accidentally perform along with them. And that's what that reminded me.
Yeah, well, all kinds of tricks. It takes all kinds of tricks.
I don't think a nickel's a good idea for the puppy.
No, I don't think so. I think peanut butter works quite well.
So that's this coming up week of Mice and Men.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Maybe.
Well, Mice and Men is based on the novella by Steinbeck. It's a great story. Lenny and George, they are two itinerant workers back in the 30s in California. It was, what they call the bindle stiffs. Bindle is that bundle that those traveling workers has their mattress and their stuff in it, so they call them bindle stiff because they're tied together with strings, and they carry it on their back. You've seen a lot of pictures, like the Dorothea Lange pictures, a lot of pictures from the 30s, during the Depression, and after, where all this, really poor guys will go from ranch to ranch, and they'll help with their crops and all that. And so Steinbeck, lived with them out in California. He spent time with them, and he knew that world very well. I mean, it's the same world of Grapes of Wrath. So Lenny and George are unique in that they are friends and they travel together. The members of this society were all very lonely. I mean, that was one of the themes. And George and Lenny have this unique asset, their friendship, and their dreams that they're going to save up enough money and buy their own house. They talk about how they'd like to have a little house with a clover field and have some animals and, feed their own animals. They'll raise their own crops. But Lenny is developmentally disabled. Maybe he's a little autistic, or he's not well adapted socially. Yeah. And he has this thing where he likes to pet soft things. And so he's it's like a child in a giant's body, if you will. Mm-hmm. So he gets into trouble because, he sees a girl that has a beautiful dress and he wants to touch it. So she gets freaked out. And everybody starts chasing him because they think he was going to rape her. And so the show begins with, basically George and Lenny running away. And then they get a new job. They go into this farm, and there are all these different characters that are the ranch hands. And Lenny gets in trouble again with the boss's wife, who she's kind of a flirt and she's a troublemaker. Long story short, Lenny ends up killing her accidentally. George decides that it's best for him to shoot Lenny himself so that he doesn't fall in the hands of the guys who are chasing them, because he can't save him anymore. And so it's not only that obviously the story of the friendship and how through the course of the story how those two guys find solace in the company of one another, and also having the dream of someday doing something other than just going from farm to farm. But there's also the tragedy of, once Lenny is gone, the dream is gone too, because George will never do that for himself. Yeah. It was all for him and Lenny once Lenny's not there. So it's a sad story, but it also has a lot of funny stuff in it, and it has puppies, and puppies are always good. So.
Yes, I agree. Someone once told me that you shouldn't be on stage with children or puppies.
That's right. That's right.
That was pretty recent.
That's right.
I learned this.
Well, I don't care, because I'm not on the stage. I'm going to be below with the orchestra in the pit. So
talk about that. I didn't know for a while, until I think the second time I saw you, that you're actually conducting as well.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's fun. It's a lot of people don't know that I'm down there, because you can't really see me.
You just look like a magician.
You can see the back. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But it's really a lot of fun, because it's as I say, my job is to attach the orchestra to the singers, but it's also we rehearse together for 3 weeks, so a lot of it is find the interpretation, and just the most fun part of my job is to figure out how the singers play their roles and what tempo they need and what pacing they need, and to give them as much flexibility as possible. Because especially in a contemporary work like of Mice and Men, which the music is a little bit more complicated, and singers worry a lot about not being with the orchestra, and my job is to figure out how they do it so they feel comfortable, so that they don't they don't have to look at the conductor the whole time.
Yeah.
Because that's something that, in the old days, even 50, 60 years ago in opera, the singers didn't act. They would just wear the costumes, and, the scenery was moving around them. They just pretty much stood in the middle and sang. They would look at the conductor the whole time. Now, no one wants to buy a ticket for that.
Yeah.
So there's acting, and there's staging, and there's their fight scenes, and there are puppies and all that. So then, my job is to figure out how to mold this show around the singers so that I feel so much at home that they basically forget that the orchestra and I are there. So I'm happiest when everybody forgets that I'm there.
I'm going to point you out every second I get. I'm going to interrupt the show. There's Kostis, everybody. I think you select what is going to be
Right.
performed as well.
Right.
I kind of want to know what makes you choose, what inspires you to pick something, or what are you looking for? Maybe what were you looking for with Of Mice and Men?
Well, here's sort of the big plan. As I said before, opera is more than 400 years old. So there's tons of music from those 400 years that I could program.
Mm-hmm.
Tulsa Opera is 67 years old, and it's a major regional opera company. So there is no other opera company like Tulsa. Nearby. You have to go down to Dallas, or you have to go up to Kansas City or St. Louis, or all the way over to Santa Fe, or all the way to Memphis. So basically, we are the biggest opera company in a very, very large region. So think about it as like a big museum. If you have like the main museum in town, you're going to have a lot of the standard stuff that you see in the museum. So you're going to have some ancient stuff, and you're going to have Renaissance, and you're going to have Baroque, and you're going to have all that. And then you're also going to have some contemporary. It's like the Philbrook, for example.
Yeah.
They have a little bit of everything. I mean, if you've never been to a museum before, you go to the Philbrook, you'll get a taste of art from all over the world in all kinds of periods. So think about Tulsa Opera in that sense. Since we are the main outlet, if you will, for opera in our region, we have to represent the art form as comprehensively as possible. So that means that we're going to do a lot of the standard repertoire, but also means we have to do something that's a little bit edgier, a little bit more contemporary. So at the same time, opera is not just art. It's also entertainment. So you're selling a show.
Yeah.
You want people to have a good time.
For sure.
And which means you have to serve a lot of different audiences, because you have people who really like the classic stuff, like, Traviata or Bohème, Verdi, or like the stuff with the famous tunes, all the Pavarotti style opera. And then you have people who want something, maybe people who have seen that stuff all their lives, and, they've heard it enough and they want to hear something new. Or you have people who never heard the old stuff and they don't want to. Yeah. So they want something a little bit more contemporary. They want something that's in English. They want a story that they can relate to. So my plan currently is to have, because Tulsa Opera does 3 major productions each season, one in October, one in February, and one in April. We do a lot of other programs, obviously, that smaller venues, and, we have a lot of other programming, educational and community programming and all that. But our 3 big shows, which are sort of our flagship activity, if you will. For those 3, I choose 2 classic works and 1 contemporary American. And the 2 classic works are generally going to be a little different in style. One of them is going to be a little bit more grand. For example, like the Romeo and Juliet that you saw, that has a lot of scenery, big costumes. It's kind of, really deluxe, if you will. Then we usually have something lighter, like a comedy. Last year we did, for example, Cinderella, which is a lighter comedy. And then we have our contemporary work. So in that way, at least with the 3 shows, we canvas a lot of different tastes. And somebody wants to get an opera sampler, for example, that hasn't heard any opera, they can come to one of our seasons and they get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's with this is the 4th season back to back that we program in American work. That's not really actually. There's a lot more contemporary opera being performed now, but it's still not the standard for most regional companies to have an American work every year, because opera is, some people think it's a little bit more old-fashioned. So some companies don't really program contemporary works. But so we're a little bit unique in that, not entirely unique, but a little bit in that we have one every year. So Mice and Men is not very new. It's from 1970. But it's still considered in the grand scheme of 400 years. It's pretty new, and it's never been done in Tulsa. So it's what you're looking at is perhaps the most famous book of one of America's greatest writers, John Steinbeck. You have something that was turned into a play. It was also turned into 2 movies. There's an old movie from the 70s, and there's the most recent one with Gary Sinise and John Malkovich. So people have seen the movie, people have seen the play. It's something that obviously is screaming to be put on the stage.
Yeah.
And then you also have it set to music by Carlisle Floyd, who is in a way considered the father of American opera. He's 89 years old now, but he was kind of the first to systematically cultivate a musical style that was based on American roots and sounds very American, and also writing stories in very conversational language, familiar stories. So he wrote Susannah, which is based on the story of Susannah and the Elders. He wrote Cold Sassy Tree, which is another famous book. And so Mice and Men, for some people, Mice and Men is considered to be the greatest American opera, sort of the most iconic in a way. So that's a piece that Tulsa Opera has never done, and so this was the right time. It fit within the season, and I think it's going to be really fantastic. I mean, we have. The other thing is that sometimes it's I get inspired by casting possibilities. You meet a singer like, oh my God, I'd really like to see this guy do this role. And for example, Corey Bix, who plays Lenny, he played it once before, but he's just really fantastic. He looks the part. He has the acting ability to portray this man-child in a way. Of course, he has a tremendous voice. And then Craig Verm is playing his friend George, and they are really close friends in real life. So that really translates.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to cast. Corey. Because he's this is not a easy role to cast. If you don't do this piece unless you have a great Lenny, and great Lenny is not an easy thing to find. So I was going to cast Corey, and then I knew that Craig was a close friend of his, so I thought it would be great to transfer that dynamic onto the stage. And Ava Pine sang with us last year. She was in The Marriage of Figaro, and she is a great, great, great actress. And Curly's wife, this little, naughty little young lady. Takes a lot of, it's a hard role to sing, but also takes a lot of acting ability. And Ava is really, so these guys, it's going to be a great show. And our director, Christine McIntyre, is a very theatrical director. She went to school at Oxford University in England, and she was a stage director at the Met in San Francisco. She's directed Big House. She's my favorite director. So, it's a really theatrical show, and it's really dynamite. And Carlisle Floyd, the composer, is going to be here.
I hope
Yeah, he's going to be there for opening night. So the little pre-curtain talk that we were talking about earlier, he's going to be there, which is a little bit, I feel a little bit under pressure because I'm going to have to talk about Carlisle Floyd. He's going to be sitting right there.
I can't imagine.
So that's a little bit nerve-wracking. And then I have to go conduct his piece. So, so he's going to be there. He's going to be introduced and going to ask us some questions or whatever. But the next day we have an event that features him. It's going to be at Lorton Performance Center at TU, and he's going to be interviewed by Rich Fisher from Studio Tulsa on the stage. And we're also going to have the Tulsa Opera Studio artists are going to sing some music from Mice and Men and from other Carlisle Floyd operas. And the Tulsa Youth Opera, the kids that were in The Giver, they're going to sing a choral piece of his. So Carlisle Floyd is kind of a big deal. I mean, we can't have Steinbeck because Steinbeck is dead. But Carlisle Floyd is like the closest thing to actually having Steinbeck here. So.
That's pretty great. I'm sure that's great for you to get to meet him and hang out.
I'm so excited. Yes,
I'm sure it's great for him to be, appreciated.
Yeah, he likes. He likes. I mean, he's a very, very personable guy. He's a real charming older gentleman. So I really hope that a lot of people will come out because that's not the kind of guy that you meet every day.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know how to relate it to stuff I see every day, but I do want to talk about maybe the difference for the performers. Let me talk about how I could go on stage singing with my acoustic guitar. I could have a shot or 6. Yeah. If I was smoking, I could put out a cigarette, walk up and sing my set. Yeah. How much different is that for the singers of the opera? Well, singing opera is a very physical thing. It's like an athletic feat. They train all their lives for the vocal cords are muscles, and they are these tiny little muscles that make all that noise. So for them to sing, for 2.5 hours on the stage without a mic
over an orchestra, and they have to change costumes, and it's hot up there, and they're under the lights, and they have to act. Sometimes they have to have sword fights, like you saw in Romeo and Juliet, or they have, in Mice and Men, you have the scene with Curly's wife and Lenny are fighting, and breaks her neck, and so there's a lot of. It's very physical, and they also have to sound great. So your voice is probably not gonna be in great shape if you have 6 shots the night before. And if you're singing with a mic, or you're kind of taking it easy a little bit, it's fine. But those guys are under a lot of pressure to perform. It's like the Olympics guys. They probably won't go out and eat a big steak or whatever before jumping track.
Smash a burger and get in the pool.
So the same thing. So they don't smoke, and they certainly don't drink before the show. And then that I think they generally probably don't drink at all, like the week of the show. Or
I'm sure. I'm sure it takes. I can't even imagine the warm up it would take. I don't know if I would feel comfortable sing. I can't even sing without a microphone. I can't imagine.
Yeah. No, those guys warm up. It's pretty systematic.
I want to. This is even. I don't even have a question for this. I've just been excited to talk to somebody that loves music about hearing a neuroscientist talk about music in her studies being one of the first things our minds can understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to talk about her science, but I thought you would appreciate how this. It's like one of the easiest things our minds process. So I imagine we are evolved to really appreciate music. And
yeah, I don't know how that works, but I do know that it goes to a different channel, I guess. So that's why music can tell things. I mean, you can say something with music without having to say it.
That's where she was going with it.
So, take for example. Now, this is kind of a unusual little thing about opera that some people may not realize. In the operas, often you'll have those big scenes where maybe there's a dozen characters on stage, and everybody is singing something different, and they may be telling. Often they're up there in some situation of tension, and everybody's telling their version of the story, or they tell how they're feeling, or that I love her, or I'm gonna kill him, or whatever. And then you have the chorus, and then they have their own story, in the background. And somehow, although they're all singing at the same time, and they have different words and different notes, you can understand all of them.
Yeah.
You can't do that in the movies or in a straight play. You can't have 10 guys talking one on top of the other. But when you have them singing, somehow so that's probably something that ties into what you're saying.
Yeah,
that, music goes through a different.
Yeah. It's really cool that people are studying, I guess, what kind of notes to put together, even though we've kind of figured it out on the way. That was just really, really great to me. And I guess I hate to try to tell this neuroscientist story because I'm so not a neuroscientist, but she talked about another study of her friends where they had pregnant mothers play music for the baby, and then came back a year after birth and played songs, and then played that specific song, and they had a reaction to it. And it really feels that it's so cool to me that music is so ingrained into everything we are. Let's talk about maybe, since opera is so much music, I kind of want to point out, before I went and actually saw an opera, I didn't, first hadn't really crossed my mind a whole bunch, but I also just kind of expected it wasn't for me. But then I went, and I was like, oh wait, maybe this is for way more people than we even know about it. I'm glad to see that the opera is also changing along with the world. I was amazed at the stage technology. I was like, holy cow. First of all, I felt like a goofball because I thought it was going to be smoky, or I thought it was smoky, but then you guys lifted a second screen. Yeah. And I was like, oh no, I'm just dumb. That's but talk about some of the technology you guys are using.
Well, I mean, we use as much of the latest technology as we can get our hands on. I mean, frankly, when it comes to technology, the only limit is the budget. I mean, our shows, to produce each one of these shows, it costs, up to $500,000. And that's for 2 performances. So it's
Yeah.
so a lot of that money goes into technology. So we have anything that as far as technology goes, everything that you see when if you go see a musical at the PAC or any of your standard shows, the opera has all that, and sometimes more. I mean, opera was the original stage art, if you will. Back in the opera was started in the 1600s, and within the first 100 years, it became the rave. I mean, the opera singers were the rock stars. And part of how that hype was built, because even back then, they were inventing technology to meet the needs of this new art form. So they would do crazy, like back in the 1700s, they would do crazy stuff. I mean, they had explosions, they have shipwrecks, they had, gods and demons flying. And that tradition is maintained. So there's a lot of a lot of fun stuff, and we've had people fly. We have all kinds of tricks with lighting. In Mice and Men, all the scene changes happen as what we call a vista. It's like, so the curtain never comes down, so the scenery changes as you're watching. So there's usually a cinematic effect where the scenery is moving, and then there's some actors in front doing something else, and between the light and all that, it all becomes this big cinematic picture, which then you can show passage of time. You can show there's like this. In Mice and Men, in the final scene, there's this sunset effect where you kind of see you can sort of feel the passage of time, and you can see this beautiful sunset in the background. So they have scrims and they have lights. I mean, there's tons of people. We have follow spot operators and people, fly scenery in and out, and people push scenery. It's a big crowd back there, and it's a big show.
Yeah.
In other words.
You want to hear another reason I felt silly there?
Why?
Because I was thinking to myself, like, "Whoa, man, this is like it's in 3D," and then I'm like, "Wait a minute, it totally is." Like,
yeah, I think I think people should not. People should just give up what they think about opera if they haven't seen it.
yeah,
Because there's a lot of, people make jokes about opera and all, and a lot of that is, jokes are always good, and a joke always, started somewhere. People say that, people have this idea that all opera singers are fat. Well, it's because,
I hadn't even thought about
it's
that.
not true. I mean, it's really not. Or that they think that all opera singers wear helmets with horns. I mean, that's also not true. Or that all operas are in Italian. That's not true. So it's a very modern, very contemporary, and very moving art form. It's it's a much more complete way of telling a story, and much more, as you were saying before, about the way that music affects us in different ways. It's an opera, an art form that is calibrated to touch the heart.
Yeah,
directly.
I like that sentence right there.
Yeah,
calibrated to touch the heart. I'm stealing it. I'm
good.
Cutting it out from you and taking it as mine. As my album title.
Excellent. I probably won't remember it anyway. So
I know you already said kind of forget what you think if you haven't been to the opera.
Right.
But what else would you say to somebody that maybe hadn't considered it or doesn't know what the opera is or doesn't think they'll be interested in opera? What would you say to them?
I think anybody who likes music and singing would probably like it. If anybody who likes stories, anybody who likes books, anybody who likes history, and anybody who likes an emotional experience in the theater should give it a shot. I think but what I basically described is just about everybody. I don't know anybody who doesn't like music. Anybody who doesn't like stories. I mean, I don't know. They gotta be, pretty jaded. So
I don't like being entertained.
Yeah, no, exactly. No entertainment for me. So I think, what you do is, if you've never been to the opera before, you can expect to hear great singing, you can expect to hear great tunes, you can expect to be moved, you can expect to see a story, and there's spectacle. Now, the only thing is, if you're a little bit nervous about it, just do a little bit of research to see which one of the operas might be your thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the best, if you've never been to it, the best thing is, show up. I mean, it's cheapest ticket is $25. It's not
worth
really that.
checking out.
It's not really that big an investment. Also, the other thing that people think is that, oh my God, all the tickets are expensive, or I have to wear my tux, or I have to behave a certain way. None of this is true. I mean, you put your jeans on, buy a $25 ticket, or students, I think it's like, I think for students it's $15. And then, come see the show in your jeans and, get a beer at intermission. I think the beer is $6 or something. And it's basically an evening. It can be a great like date night, but also be just your evening out. Instead of, stay home and watch TV, you just drive down to PAC, buy a cheap ticket, see a show.
Yeah. And it's fun. I enjoy it.
It is fun.
Being that Of Mice and Men is contemporary,
yeah.
Do you think the first-time opera listeners should check? Is this the one to check out? One, because it's kind of newer age and it's in English.
I would think if someone has never been to the opera, this should probably be the first.
Yeah.
Because they have, some people who've been going to the opera for a long time, like older people of a generation that really like the old-fashioned stuff, are always going to be comparing the newer stuff with the old stuff. And how they say, well, things are not like they used to be. Well, that's they say that about everything.
Yeah.
They say that about
and that's good,
architecture. They say that about clothes. It's like, oh, well, the new stuff is not as good as the old stuff. I mean, that's somehow the sometimes you get older and you get a little bit stuck with what you think, and you don't like the newer stuff. So in that sense, some people who are used to a certain type of music might not like it as much. But if you don't know what to expect, you probably need to go to the thing that is more contemporary, the one that's in your language, and the one that tells a story that you're sort of already familiar with, or that at least you can, it's obvious what's happening. You don't know if suddenly that dropped into a place where, everybody looks like they're from, Italy from 200 years ago.
Yeah, and nobody's. What? Are there going to be horns?
No horns.
I didn't want to say
they're going to be puppies.
That's so much better.
Yes, no horns, no.
And does everybody get a cup of peanut butter like the puppy, or is that not included in the ticket price?
Well, I mean, I don't know what everybody does in the dressing room, but...
No, I mean for the people coming to the show.
For the audience, well, I haven't thought about it. Maybe we should.
You might add
that would be the treat. Yeah,
to the candy section. Man, what do you think people will take away from this show?
Well, I think in terms of opera, what they're going to take away is that opera is very vibrant drama. Opera is great theater. It's going to be really engrossing. People are going to get really into it. I think they're going to it's almost like with opera, you take in the story, but everything expands inside you because of the music. Just everything is just so much fills you up. It's such a fulfilling experience. As far as opera goes, what they're going to take away from the story is it's a story about friendship. It's a story about compassion. It's in a way what makes a great story or a great drama is that you watch the story and you feel that you have a little bit of each one of those characters inside you. So you identify. So each one of us is a little bit of Eleni. Because each one of us has difficulty, no matter who you are and what you do, almost daily we have times where we feel like we don't understand, that we don't fit in. We do stupid stuff. We regret something every day.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I don't feel that way. No,
well, I should hang out with you more then. And then, then there's George, who is, he has this sings this song at the beginning that says he's frustrated with Lenny because Lenny has screwed up and they lost their jobs again. So he says, well, I don't know why I'm traveling with you. Says I could do so much better by myself. I'm sure we've all felt that way at one time or another. Even again, maybe not you, but you have your friends. Sometimes like, oh my God, when is he going to stop embarrassing me? And then you get angry. You say things you didn't want to say, and you're like, well, you realize that your friends might be pissing you off, but there's a reason why they're your friends, because somehow you're not the same person without them, and they could be very frustrating, but somehow you're tied with them. And then is this Curly's wife, who is she's behaves kind of slutty, but it's because her husband doesn't treat her well, and she's found herself in a situation where she's in a bad marriage and she's stuck in this ranch in the middle of nowhere, and nobody's paying attention to her. So that people have found themselves in so there's real life experience in it. So I think from the story you just take away about the value of friendship, value of compassion, patience, and just really empathy. I mean, just like understanding other people. It's the more I think, was it Steinbeck that said that the more you know people, the more you love them. So it's more about empathy and understanding other people and being kind to people.
That's beautiful, I think.
I think so. I mean, that's
really
I think that's what ultimately. I mean, that's not just opera. Everything that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what we would try for every day when we're not screwing up or eating peanut butter.
I don't know. I think peanut butter is beautiful.
Well, there's also empathy with peanut butter. I mean, you have to understand peanut butter.
Yep. Okay. First, this isn't first. Thanks for coming and doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time and
this was fun,
educating me on opera. I have a few more questions for you, though. We're going to go another hour after I said thanks. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. But well, you can always take that and put that at the end.
I kind of want to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
And have you answer them, and I'm going to put them all together at once so we can test that theory about having 10 voices at the same time.
Okay, sounds
and understand. There's no way I want to do that. I do want to ask for somebody, what can somebody go look up now from there? I mean, because people are listening on the phones or the computers, what can they go look up now if they've never really listened or checked out opera? What would you suggest?
You mean about opera in general, or Mice and Men?
I'm saying opera in general.
Opera in general. Okay, I think if somebody has never heard or seen any opera before,
or looked at it seriously, I think we've all maybe seen it with the fat people and the horns in the movies, but maybe giving it a chance is what I mean.
Giving it a chance. Okay. I think they should. If they want to they should get a little bit of a taste of like the older, the more classic opera. They should check out. Okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna give you 3 names.
Okay.
Of these singers. One name is Jonas Kaufmann. Jonas is spelled like Jonas, but it's German, so spelled like Jonas. Kaufmann. Kaufmann. He's a tenor. Just look him up on YouTube, and that's one guy to check out. There's a gal whose name is Anna Netrebko. Netrebko. Just plug her name into YouTube and watch whatever she's got. And then the third guy is a Mexican tenor. His name is Juan Diego Flores. Put his name into YouTube and check out one of his songs. So that's, if you want to, see what classic opera looks and sounds like in our day, those are probably the 3 guys. I mean, there are tons more, and I feel bad for forgetting the others, but I wasn't prepared for the question, so there it is. Then I think people should check out a little bit more of contemporary opera. So one of the hottest composers working now, the younger generation, of course, Carlisle Floyd is a real classic. But there's this other man called Jake Heggie. He wrote an opera that we did 3 years ago called Dead Man Walking. It's based on the movie with Sean Penn and all that. It's also a really dramatic story. So if you go on YouTube and you Google Jake Heggie, there's a lot of his stuff on there. Going to be some scenes from his operas and all that. That's kind of to get an idea of what contemporary American opera is like. Completely different style from the older Italian and French operas. And then you can also go on the PBS website and Great Performances. There is an entire, I don't know if people know this, but on PBS and Great Performances, you can actually watch, you can stream like tons of those performances that you have seen on TV. So there is the entire opera Moby Dick by Jake Heggie is on there. Now, you don't have to watch the whole thing. I mean, it's
Yes, of
2.5
course.
hours. But, okay, you think Moby Dick, the opera is, what's that like? Well, check it out, because it's basically, he takes the entire book and he puts it in 2.5 hours. And that's a really spectacular production. We talk about technology. I mean, that's the most cutting edge you've ever seen. It's a great performance. And you get an idea of, what the contemporary American opera sounds like, just like Dead Man Walking. So check out those three singers, and then also check out Jake Hagee.
That I want to change the suggestion. That's only if you're not going or don't have the opportunity to go to the opera. I say go first.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to, just like anything, seeing it there and live is completely different than on YouTube.
For sure. But also, it's like, the more you get into it, the more fun it is. It's like sports, like basketball. I go sometimes, I'll go to the bar and watch a game, and that's all I do with sports. But so many people, they read the interviews of the players, and they look at the statistics and, all that. I mean, they're like, especially now with a tournament, is like, there's some people who, that's all they do all day.
Yeah.
So opera is sort of the same way. If you get into it and you get all the background and you watch the videos and all, then you enjoy it more, because, for example, if you go see an opera and you've gone to YouTube and see like 3 or 4 different performances of like the same piece, then you start having an opinion. And as we know, when people have an opinion, that's when they really get into it.
Yeah, that's when they're ready to commit.
Exactly.
What after Of Mice and Men? What's coming up next year?
Next year, we have again 3 different types of things. The one in the fall is La Boheme. That's like the most classic of the classic. Real romantic opera. That's like great date night. I don't know if people have seen the musical Rent. It's the same story. And it's a story about young people, and so it's going to be a very young cast. They sing great tunes. There's love interest. So great. So that's kind of like your romantic. It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet, that sort of type of show. Then in February, we have our American piece, which is A Streetcar Named Desire, which is the opera based on Tennessee Williams. And it's basically, if you've seen the play, the Tennessee Williams play, it's almost verbatim, but it's in music. And that's another American composer, Andrew Previn, wrote that a few years ago, and it's a really great show, very intense. There's Stella! So of course you hear, Stella, shouted by an opera singer. It's definitely an experience. And then the last show is going to be huge. It's Samson and Delilah. That's, the Samson and Delilah story,
Yeah, for sure.
Delilah's bad girl. Samson falls for her. She cuts off his hair. And there it goes. So, and then there's, of course, the big, huge chorus. There's a ballet at the last act. There's a, but it's going to be a pretty hot, ballet sequence. Huge chorus. And then, of course, the tenor, Samson, pushes the columns and the temple collapses right in front of the customers.
Oh, great. that's I'm looking forward to that. I think that one's the one I'm looking forward to the most next year. That just sounds incredible. I guess, where can we get tickets?
Okay, tickets you get basically at tulsaopera.com. Just go to tulsaopera.com, click on the top. There's a button that says tickets. Just click on that. We'll take you there. You can buy tickets for Mice and Men, which is on April 10th and 12th. Or you can, if you want to buy for next season, I don't know if the button's already on there, but you can call the number. It's 918-582-4035. But basically tulsaopera.com, and of course Facebook.
For sure.
Tulsa Opera and Twitter.
I think Facebook has a bunch of discount codes too. I would check that out.
Absolutely.
I would check that. I look forward to.
No, don't buy full price. Just go get the discounts.
Well, I think group discounts.
Yeah,
that's what it is. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to bugging you with weird questions after the show.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's my favorite thing to do.
But if you don't mind weird answers.
Of course. I have another weird question for you.
I'll give you another weird answer.
I don't guess it's weird, but I want to know personally, when you're looking at opera or looking at anything musical or anything artistic at all, what specifically moves you the most as just personally?
Well, I think for me, it's the combination. It's, I'm a musician by trade, so obviously, music moves me. But that's the thing about with opera. It's the combination of things that really rocks it. You have to have all the, for me, for example, there might be an opera where the music by itself doesn't really do it. So I wouldn't play the CD in my car.
Yeah.
But when you put it together with the story and the acting, then it's a different experience. Or there are some other operas where the story is, really not that great. But once you put it together with the music, then it means something.
Then boom.
So that's why sometimes there are operas where I could very easily tell you. I mean, if I told you about it, it wouldn't seem so exciting.
Yeah.
But if you see it, that's a different story. I think it's sort of the how things really work together and the chemistry between the words and the music, but then of course the performance is key. The performance is the most important thing. Pretty much if you have good singers, they can sing the phone book, and it's going to be great.
Well, let's write an opera with the phone book, and we'll test that theory.
It's been done.
Everything cool's been done before.
Yeah, well,
except for our new screen
I'm not sure
idea.
how cool that was, but that's exactly. We'll have to work on the technology.
Well, thank you again so much, everybody. Please check out TulsaOpera.com. I'm sure you can read history of Tulsa Opera. It's one of the oldest. It's really, really a cool thing that I'm glad I'm into it now. I'm going to become obsessed, and it's going to be weird, and I'm always going to talk about it, but we'll get over it. Thanks a lot. And thank you guys so much
Jason.
for listening. Please share this with somebody if you learned a little bit about the opera, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Kostis.
Thanks.